Good afternoon, Minister Elmore. You're the UK Minister for the Caribbean. You've been to some of the worst affected areas. I think you were in St. Elizabeth, Santa Cruz. Mm-hmm. What's your impression of what you saw, visiting the damaged areas?
Yeah. Good afternoon. It's really good to be with you. I mean, I think we were down in Black River yesterday and in Santa Cruz, and there's no, I mean, I've never seen a hurricane before in terms of the aftermath of it, so I say it in that context, that it was quite distressing at points because you see the gravity of what's happened in the area, sort of physical buildings that were there and I've never seen them that are just now rubble, right the way through to walking through the streets where you realise that the businesses that look relatively intact on the high street have had the sea actually come in from their back walls and take all the goods out with them back into the sea. And then there's a particular sort of poignant moment when I was discussing with the superintendent there that he was telling me that there was a fire, a car fire, and the fire service couldn't respond because it had been submerged by seawater. So you realise all the consequences that have gone with it. But one of the things that came across during the whole visit in Santa Cruz or in the Baptist Church or in Black River was the quite intoxicating, can I say, positivity from the people that are living there and trying to rebuild and rebuild stronger. And I met so many people yesterday who were saying, well, we'll be back, we're already back, we're fighting, and that positivity was absolutely intoxicating to listen to people who really wanted to see, the positives out of this and how they'd rebuild. In
terms of British aid, are you able to say what form it took in the £7.5 million and how has it been dispersed?
So part of that has actually been around, yesterday I saw the World Food Programme delivering food aid, and that's actually part of what the funding is being used for. We commissioned things like HMS Trent, so we had engineers on vessel that were able to offer support. We've had midwives here, specialist engineers, we've had disaster relief officials come here to offer support. So it's been very practical things like food, right the way through technical assistance. And so that money has been, I think, put to really good use and has been at the very front of how we've been able to respond as the UK government, but also how the Jamaican government's been able to respond too.
The British government has so far pledged £7.5 million. I think initially it was £2 and then it was upped to £7.5 million. But many suggest that Britain, as a former colonial master, can and should have done more. Is there likely to be any additional support?
I think the important thing is to remember that we have to work with the Jamaican government about what the Jamaican government want and respecting their needs. And some of that, as I've said, has come through technical assistance, which isn't always about money, it's about having specialists. So I've had some really positive discussions in the last 2 days with other people on the ground who've experienced the direct results of the hurricane, all the way through to ministers and business leaders. So I think the key message from my point of view is that where we can offer support, we will. And it's also about trying to make sure that we offer the right support and deal with the right pressures, not just in the immediate aftermath, but how we actually deliver for reconstruction in the months and years ahead. And that everything from developments around bridge infrastructure and road infrastructure, and equally how we can work with the business community to make sure we deliver what the Jamaican people and the government need and want.
So tell me, having seen the damage done by Hurricane Melissa, and in particular, like on the coast, there are 4 hospitals, for example, that have been badly damaged. One, I think the Prime Minister said was destroyed, Black River. Has it informed your thoughts in terms of what you might want to recommend to your government when you return in terms of future assistance?
So I saw firsthand in Santa Cruz how money through climate resilience funding meant that the hospital there, which stood not just Hurricane Melissa, but Hurricane Beryl as well, was up and running, had, I think, around 70 patients in the hospital. All the staff working there throughout the hurricane was able to keep open because of the resilience, the gold standard of development in that hospital. And I think that's one of the key messages that I take away from this, and in every conversation I've had over the last 2 days, is that where infrastructure is built back, has the resilience, it can, in this case 2 hurricanes, survive some of the most extreme weather conditions. So one of the key elements I'll take back is that where UK government funding is being used on infrastructure, particularly in medical, and I'd like to see it in schools as well, where possible, that these buildings can be sustained in these extreme weather events and then can continue to function. It was truly remarkable yesterday seeing Santa Cruz and talking to the clinical team, to the board chair, and hearing not only their pride in the fact that they were able to run and continually offer that medical assistance, as well as assistance for the wider area, given the scale of the devastation. But they were also able to say that there were patients still coming in seeking medical assistance, and they were able to offer it. Yeah. That's got to be one of the stories that we take back to see how we can use that investment, more substantially in the months and years ahead.
Tell me, your colleague Dawn Butler, the MP for Brent East, she's a chair of the UK's all-party parliamentary group for Jamaica. Yeah. She wrote to the Home Secretary recently requesting that temporary humanitarian visas and fee waivers for vulnerable relatives of UK nationals affected by the storm. What's the government's response to that request?
So I know Dawn well. She's a colleague, and I think we've had this conversation. The visa issues, some have been successful, some haven't. I appreciate there's some challenge in that, but I think the matter is where we've been able to offer that support as UK government. We have, and we've done that quite quickly. We had repatriation flights. We've been able to offer support through the High Commissioner's office to make sure that people could use commercial aircraft to leave, as well as repatriation. So we have really stepped up where we've needed to, and crucially responding to what people in Jamaica actually wanted and needed. So those sorts of conversations are always ongoing and how we can do more. And Dawn is absolutely right to challenge the government in that regard. That's her job as the APPG chair and as a backbench MP and as a colleague with Jamaican heritage. I know it's something that she cares deeply about. And I suppose my work is to make sure that we deliver as much as we can in the context of listening to what the Jamaican government and Jamaican people want. So the work is always ongoing in that respect.
Okay, the British government recently, we're told, no longer sharing intelligence with the United States about suspected drug trafficking vessels in the Caribbean. And the thinking is that it doesn't want to be complicit in US military strikes, which many have deemed illegal and under international law. What's the actual position? Is this true? And have you spoken, the government spoken to the US government on this particular issue?
So the decisions the US are taking are very much a decision for the United States. The UK government could not be more explicitly clear that we want to resolve issues around narcotics, and there obviously are drug issues in the UK coming from areas of Latin America. But we want to work with partners in the very clear context of international law and in respect to the UN Charter. And that's what we will continue to do when trying to deal with these broader issues around narcotics. In terms of the US decision and how they're undertaking this action, our role in this is to do our very best to calm the situation and to not see it escalate. That's not what we would want to see. And equally, we want to try and find ways in which we can still resolve some of these problems, but only in the context of following international law.
Is there anything else that the British government can and is willing to do to protect vulnerable countries in the Caribbean? Because even Jamaica, who is some distance away, are affected because our fishermen have said they're fearful of going too far out to sea because some fishermen have been killed in some of these strikes. But when you look at other countries, Grenada and fishermen in Trinidad, which are all in that immediate zone where the military buildup is, that it's a pretty dicey situation, and tourism is also very important. Tourists generally don't want to go where there's imminent threat of war.
I mean, so I've spoken to a number of Caribbean foreign ministers where this has been raised, and I can offer the same reassurance I've offered to them, is that the UK government wants to work to calm the situation, as I've already said, and also wants to ensure that those Caribbean nations don't feel that concern and want to try and make sure we play a part in that. So it is about providing that reassurance, and those conversations are ongoing.
The question of reparations has come back up in the wake of the hurricane, Minister Elmore, because many persons have said now is a really apt time for the UK to truly engage the Caribbean on this issue. And we know those discussions may take some time or so on, but one of the key things that some persons are saying, why not an apology? The Dutch government has done one last year. The Dutch king has done an apology. The Denmark government or the Danish government has done one. Why is the British government reluctant to make an apology for slavery?
I mean, I think the first thing we need to say is that the slave trade was absolutely abhorrent, and that obviously is something that may have happened a long time ago, but there is no mitigating from the fact that that obviously has a huge impact on very many people. I think secondly, we are trying to work now with Caribbean partners on the modern day challenges, whether that's on climate or education, and a whole host of other areas. But the thing for us is about trying to move forward and having that positive relationship. And it's really important to us, and to me as the Minister for the Caribbean in the Foreign Office, to keep these relationships going and to keep the conversations going. And that is what we're focusing on, is that next step, is that part of of our role as the UK in supporting the Caribbean region and making sure that there's economic growth, have our cultural ties, and then we can do more practical work around technical assistance and education. So I see that as part of our work now moving forward.
On the question of climate change, many persons in the Caribbean still feel enough is not being done by the North to help us to lower the global temperature. I think it's by 1.5 degrees. And we're bearing the brunt of it. Melissa is a mere manifestation of the horrible effects of climate change. And Britain, the United States, the EU, other countries, they're big industrial powers and are contributing more to climate change than we are or we could ever be. And there's a feeling that more can be done on the parts of a government like Britain and obviously your European counterparts in America. And we're not feeling that support.
I mean, I can't speak for any other nation that wouldn't be right as a UK minister. I think the key thing for us is that I passionately feel that we are a sort of world leader in this, through the change of government last year in the UK, we are moving forward on the green agenda, on green jobs, on green growth domestically. But what that also means globally, particularly around small island development states where we've got this very important work on climate, is that we are taking very seriously our responsibility on tackling the climate crisis, whether that's in attendance at COP or whether that's on practical work of in-country engagement. If you take the work that we've done in Jamaica on these gold standard resilient hospitals, that isn't just in Jamaica, that's across the Caribbean. So that's trying to use that funding properly and structurally so that we have climate resilient institutions that can be used in these emergency scenarios. Now, I readily accept there's always more to do with this, and I've seen myself very firsthand in the last 2 days this impact of climate and how it is having such a significant impact on countries like Jamaica. So we do have more to do in that sense, but it's about using the funding to make resilience and rebuild, and also trying to ensure that we use our technical skills to make sure that countries have that support in other spheres too. So it's a mixed approach. But it is about trying to acknowledge that as a UK government, we do have a responsibility to Jamaica and other Caribbean and other small island states around the world that are experiencing even more severe climate challenges than Jamaica is. So that work is ongoing, and we do take it very, very seriously.
On the question of recovery and rebuilding, our tourist industry has been battered. Many hotels were damaged and were closed. And they'll have to obviously be repaired. There's some that we're going to are opening back in the next week or so for the winter tourist season. One of the barriers that some hoteliers and the tourism stakeholders speak of, even to this day, for British tourists coming to Jamaica is the air passenger duty. It's still pretty high. And certainly when you compare it to other European countries, it's, for a single person, it could be as high as about £300 for a single person traveling to Jamaica in terms of additional taxes. Is it something that the British government would consider, even if a temporary, to help a country like Jamaica recover?
I mean, I think it's an interesting question around climate and sort of how we take our responsibility seriously. And I think these things are always in a balance, and we have to acknowledge the challenges that Melissa will face, but also our responsibilities around tackling the climate crisis. And one of the ways in which we do that is around individual taxation on air passenger duty. So I don't think it's something that we're actively considering at the moment. It can be something that, we can discuss with the Jamaican government, but we do have to think of it but the reality of our responsibilities around climate and making sure that, yes, people can travel and they should come to this beautiful country. And I've been overwhelmed by the sort of glorious nature and beauty of this country over the last 2 days, having never been here before. But we also have to acknowledge that we do have this wider responsibility, and it's something that the UK has sort of led on in terms of this particular issue around climate, that we want people who absolutely should travel, should see the benefits of visiting the Caribbean, but also acknowledging it through these issues around the impact of climate.
Is there any particular request that the Jamaican government made or have made of you on this trip?
So we've had lots of good, very robust conversations. I think the key thing that or one of the key things that I will take away from these conversations is around infrastructure redevelopment. And I need to take that back to London and work through now with the Jamaican government and with partners about how we can play our part as a UK government, as UK PLC, to be able to deliver some of this work now around infrastructure, and not just building infrastructure that sort of is built quickly, but is built with more resilience and built with sort of longer term challenges linked to climate and these extreme weather events moving forward. So it's very much in the forefront of my mind, and Jamaican ministers have been very, very generous with their time and meeting with me, and I'm very glad of that, and I want to keep that dialogue going.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.